up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we're going to be talking about another head coaching candidate. This is Todd Bowles, the defensive coordinator for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers that the Lions have requested an interview with. Also, is trading back an option in this year's draft? Let's get it started.
You know, I got to shout out DoseOfDion, man, because it was actually the first time I went live on YouTube. And, you know, guys don't know DoseOfDion. He put out a lot of good content for the Detroit Lions.
Welcome, everybody, to another video. Glad you guys are here. Now, before we get started, y'all know what I'm going to say. Thank you to everyone that came over to DoseOfDion Gaming today for our first Madden 21 tournament. I would say it was a success for the most part. I mean, yeah, you know, some things didn't really go as planned, but we made it work. It was super fun. And if you guys do want to go check out the replay, I don't know if it's uploaded yet on that channel, but it's about almost 3 hours long, but it was really fun. So you guys go check that out. Maybe you can just skip around if you want to. Either way, that's DoseOfDion Gaming. We will be having more tournaments, more things like that all the time. So go check it out. Just do that. There's no football, man. Come on. Hey, when the playoffs are over, what are you going to do? What are you going to do on the weekend? You're going to go to DoseOfDion Gaming, right? Okay. So we're talking about Todd Bowles in today's video. Now, the Lions have requested an interview because Tampa Bay is a playoff team, so you have to request the interview. And Todd Bowles apparently hasn't been getting a lot of buzz this offseason from NFL teams, which I think I probably know why. But the Lions have requested to interview him for the head coaching position. So again, this may mean that our next head coaching hire may be a little bit further out than maybe some people are hoping for, I guess I would say. The Lions do already have scheduled Arthur Smith and Dan Campbell for next week. And now Todd Bowles could potentially be added to that. Brian Daboll is another guy that I think, is it Daboll? The guy was saying Daboll on TV. Is it Brian Daboll? I didn't know that. Maybe he's the guy the Lions add to that at some point. I don't think they've already interviewed him yet. Todd Bowles. Let's talk about him a little bit. Let's talk about where he's been, what he's done. Todd Bowles is a former NFL player that got his start in coaching defensive backs. And he did that in a lot of different places. He coached defensive backs for multiple teams, including the Jets, the Browns, and the Dallas Cowboys. Then in 2008, he got his opportunity with the Miami Dolphins as a secondary coach. So you can tell that's kind of where his expertise lies. With Miami Dolphins, even though he was only the secondary coach, he was also the assistant head coach. So when they fired their head coach at the time, Tony, with 3 games left in the season, he became the interim head coach. And he finished that year 2-1. Okay, the players bought in, they brought probably some life, and they finished 2-1 the season, and it was a good look for him. In 2012, he went to Philadelphia to become Philadelphia's defensive coordinator. Now you can see he's working his way up. The very next season, in 2013, he goes to Arizona to work as their defensive coordinator. After the 2014 season, he gets voted as the assistant coach of the year. Pretty impressive. 22 of 50 votes went to Todd Bowles. So clearly he was doing his thing as a defensive coordinator. And then in 2015, the New York Jets, who he's already been with before, were like, hey, you know what? We need a head coach. Rex Ryan's no longer here. We need a head coach. What about that Todd Bowles guy? He's doing all right as a defense coordinator. So they looked over to Todd Bowles and he said, hey, you want to become our head coach? He gave it a try. 4-12 year 4, went 10-6 the very first season under Todd Bowles. That is a great way. So interim head coach 2-1, first year 10-6. Let's get it. The Jets are on to something. But unfortunately, it doesn't last. The next season, 5-11. Year after that, 5-11. And in his final year, 4-12. And then he was ultimately fired from the New York Jets. So it started off hot, but it didn't finish very hot. And after his little stint there with the New York Jets, he is now with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, where we know him as their defensive coordinator. And Tampa Bay Buccaneers are now in the playoffs, and he has really done a good job of turning that defense around. So clearly, has that head coaching experience. If that's what the Lions are really looking for here, he has had some experience. Were those experiences great? Not really. I mean, look, experience and good experience are two different things. You could have an experience, but how was that experience? Well, it started off well. It just didn't finish so well for Todd Bowles, and that was in his last 3 seasons. So he was fired from the New York Jets. Now, I got to be fair to Todd a little bit here. The Jets are kind of a mess right now, and honestly, as much as Mark Sanchez gets made fun of, since Mark Sanchez has not been their quarterback, they have really been pretty bad. I mean, they just haven't found any kind of footing. I mean, for him, in only 4 years there, he had Fitzpatrick, McCown, and Sam Darnold as the starting quarterbacks. And now it looks like Sam Darnold could be once again moved on from him. They could be looking at another quarterback. And Sam Darnold was the 3rd pick in the draft when they took him. Obviously, there was kind of a mess going on there with New York. Basically, after he's fired, he said, if the situation isn't right, I won't take it. Well, he's probably a little stained from that whole Jets experience. Like, oh, wow, this is terrible. This is a bad organization right now. What's actually kind of interesting is that Todd Bowles, going way back, interviewed for the Lions head coaching job. What was it, back in 2009 when Jim Schwartz actually got the job? He interviewed way back then. Now, he was coming from Miami, and Miami had a very, very big turnaround when he was there. So when he was interviewing for the Detroit Lions, he said a couple of things. First thing, he attributed their turnaround, number one, to culture. And he said, when you're down, because at the time they were 1-15, then they went 11-5. Lions were 0-16, so they were trying to pick back up. He said, look, when you're down, condition your players mentally and emotionally, because you're emotionally hurt when you were 1-15. You got neighbors saying you're trash. You feel it losing every single week. You're emotionally hurt. But he didn't get that job. Jim Schwartz ultimately got that job for the Detroit Lions. As a defense coordinator, Todd Bowles had a pretty good amount of success, like we talked about. He won the assistant coach of the year, and since he has joined Tampa Bay, that defense has gotten much, much better, like way better. All right, in 2018, the year before he was there, they ranked the last in the league in pass rating allowed at 110.9. They were giving up 4.7 yards per carry, 29 points per game, and they were only blitzing 23.9% of the time. Now, blitzing isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I want to point that out. You'll see why in a second. First year with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as defensive coordinator, they then allowed only a 90 passer rating. That's a huge improvement. They basically jumped up like halfway in the league. Only 3.3 yards per carry. One of the best teams in the league against the run. And still 28.1 points per game, which is kind of weird. But he blitzed 43.4% of the time. Crazy. That's about almost half the time he's blitzing. And then this season, allowing a 94.3 pass rating, 3.6 yards per carry, and only 22.2 points per game, and blitzing nearly 40% of the time. The defense has gotten much better in Tampa Bay with Todd Bowles. Todd Bowles, as you can see from the blitz numbers, that's how he likes to do things. He runs a 3-4 attacking defense. Now, why is that important? Well, if a guy like Micah Parsons did it out there, I think Parsons would fit perfectly in that kind of defense that's about getting after the quarterback, because I felt like that's what Parsons did very well. But either way, that's the kind of defense that he likes to run. I do think it is important to note that this isn't just some kind of defensive style that he developed working in Tampa Bay. This is the defensive style that he's had even going back to his time with the New York Jets, and you can see that from the numbers in his years with the Jets. Now, with the Jets, when he was their head coach, unfortunately, like we said, the records didn't go so well, and the defense for the Jets didn't do so hot either. I mean, sure, they probably lacked some playmakers, but after a year where the defense finished 9th in scoring, it then was 28th, 22nd, and 29th in his final season. So the defense struggled. The offense went from doing pretty darn well to kind of falling off, and then it kind of stayed below average. So they were pretty much below average at everything. And that's, again, that can be an issue with coordinators, because now he has experience. Maybe he can learn from that, but that's the importance of sometimes it just doesn't simply translate. You would think, hey, yeah, the defense could be great now, but sometimes it doesn't translate like that, because now you're in charge of the whole team, not simply, hey, I just got to worry about the defense. I got to worry about everything in an organization that's struggling, but that's usually where the jobs come open. So it can be very difficult for a first-time head coach in an organization, team like the Jets, that was struggling big time. One thing I've definitely started to look for when I've looked at candidates is if they found a quarterback, right? Because you look at the Jets, right? They could not find a quarterback. They still may not have found their quarterback. How did he do? Did they make any effort to go draft a quarterback when he was the head coach? Sure, he wasn't a GM, but he was still part of the team. Well, the first guy they went after was Bryce Petty. Now, that was a 4th-round pick. That didn't work out. Next up, they went after Christian Hackenberg. You remember, was he at Penn State? I think he was at Penn State. That was a 2nd-round pick. That didn't work out. And most recently, Sam Darnold. He was there when they drafted Sam Darnold, who was the 3rd pick, and we'll see. It doesn't look like it's going to work out, but we'll see. He's been praised for certain things that he did with the Jets, and he was known kind of as a player's coach, and he was able to kind of keep emotions in check in the locker room, which is very important, and he was, pretty good with that without losing the locker room. But he was also kind of frowned upon for some things that he did. Late calls, certain decisions, late games, being unsuccessful as a head coach. That's really what it comes down to. So the Lions have requested an interview, and I think it makes sense. Again, interview as many people as you can if you want to. If you haven't fallen in love with somebody, I would interview tons of guys. I just think it's the right way to do it. This may just be a theory, but for me, when I look at how much he blitzes, I almost think that maybe some of it has to do because of that defensive back and secondary background, working with the back end. Maybe he's looking at it like, okay, I know how this is, and when they blitz, it helps my back end. It helps the back end. So maybe that's why that's his strategy, because of that background of him working with the defensive back and secondary, that maybe that's why he blitzes so much as a defensive coordinator. So, if he was hired here as Lions head coach, he'd be bringing a lot of heat. That is definitely for sure. And, look, how do you guys feel about him? Personally, not in love with it. I mean, when you look at what's available right now in terms of who the Lions are interviewing and who they're putting on their list, the GM position and the head coaching position, where it seems like the Lions are interested in getting at least one of those spots with someone with experience, which I think, obviously, you guys know, I 110% agree with that, doing that for sure. But when you look at what's available out there in terms of options, just based on who's available, I mean, when you look at the GM position, you got a couple of options. You could have Rick Smith, your Thomas Demetrius. If you don't want either of those guys, now you're likely trying to pry away someone that's still in a contract, that John Schneider. the Pittsburgh's general manager, maybe something like that, which could be very difficult. You look at the head coaching position, now we have a lot of names out there. A lot of these names, we got the news that Marvin Lewis is doing well, have had experience at the head coaching position. Pat Fitzgerald comes up recently. Now, only at the college level, but he's had experience being a head coach of a program for a very long time. Marvin Lewis comes up. Then we talk about today Todd Bowles. Even though it wasn't a huge stint, it didn't go super well, it's still technically experienced. Now, there's a difference between good and bad experience, as I mentioned, and I think you guys definitely have to look at that. If it's went completely awful, then maybe you should take consideration, okay, he has experience, but it didn't go well. You know, it has to go well as well. But again, I think that's what clearly the Lions are looking at as well here, and I think it may be more likely that they hire someone like that, because GM position, as you could, it may be difficult just based on who's available. But we'll see. I mean, hey, if they could pry out one of those GMs, I love it. I would absolutely love it. I mean, look, the only general manager that we believe is a finalist so far that we've heard is George Patton, and George Patton doesn't have that GM experience under his belt. He's been an assistant GM. So how do the Lions value that? That would be interesting to me. How do they value that? They look at, okay, his assistant, that's close enough, or is it, hey, you know, he's an assistant, but he's not an actual general manager. So now we need a head coach that's done it. Because if that is the case, if that's how they're looking at it, then if the Lions hired a guy like George Patton, now you're looking at completely different options, and maybe it's more narrowing options, but I think you're starting to see different names out there, and we'll see how many names continue to pile up that have coached before, and we'll see if we find a trend here. Now, the other part I said in the beginning of this video was trading back in the draft. Now, the draft's way out for now, but I do want to touch on this just a little bit. So I saw this Lions article put out there and saying that Lions should trade back in this year's draft, and I do want to touch on it saying that I think it's a very big possibility the Lions could be entertaining the trade back in this year's draft. Now, we don't know who the head coach is. We don't know exactly what they'll be looking for, but I think trading back could be a very possible option. When you look at where the Lions are at number 7, and honestly, I think there's a lot of teams in this draft that could be considering trying to trade back, but obviously you need someone to trade up. Okay, there's got to be someone to trade up. Well, where the Lions sit at 7, that could be a possibility. If you think about it, who's available, right? You think about the quarterbacks that are available. You have Justin Fields, Zach Wilson, Trevor Lawrence, Trey Lance, Kyle Trask, Mac Jones. I mean, you know, it goes on and on. You have these quarterbacks. Now, I would say about 4 of those guys may go first round. Maybe we'll get some surprises that jump into the first round. But where the Lions sit at number 7, maybe if you had 3 quarterbacks go within the first 4 and someone wanted to jump up and get Trey Lance, maybe that's your opportunity to move back. You know, I think there's certain opportunities. If Stafford stayed and a quarterback is there at 7 and some team wants to jump up and grab him to make sure he doesn't go anywhere, that would be your opportunity to trade back. I also think trading back wouldn't be a terrible move either, depending on who's available, because I think if you want a receiver first round, which I don't know if they'll do that or not, if they did and, you know, free agency worked out how it works out and they want to go get the top receiver like they used to do all the time, then you could be in the situation where, hey, yeah, you could bounce back and you could still land a top receiver. There's some very, very good receivers, and there's really 3 top dogs, I would say, in this draft. 2 very good ones, Jamar Chase, Devontae Smith. Question is who goes first. But then you have your Jalen Waddles, Sullivans, right? You have some good receivers. You have a lot of really good receivers in this draft. And I think you always see a lot of good receivers. So that could be another option for the Lions. And if Micah Parsons, say a guy like Micah is their top option, he's gone, then again, you can see the Lions considering it. What would be the situations where you wouldn't want to trade back? Well, I think those are a little bit more obvious. Well, number 1, if Matthew Stafford's not here, then you're going to have to find a quarterback. Unless you make a trade for Deshaun Watson, which if Stafford's not here, hey. But you're probably going to have to take quarterback then if Matthew's not here, right? So you take one there. Or if you're in a situation where you absolutely love the dude that falls to 7 and you still have Stafford, you're like, you know what, though? This is going to be our future. We want this guy for our future. Kind of like Jordan Love. Now, Jordan Love pick at 30 versus 7, it's a big difference. But those are the 2 scenarios where I can see them not trading back. Or if you're in love with Micah Parsons because he stays available, or a wide receiver. So there's definitely both sides. It's very early to this, but I do think trading back is a legitimate possibility, and it's something that will be probably talked about as time goes on. So I can definitely see the Lions trading down, trying to acquire more draft picks, knowing that they only have 5 this year. They don't have a 6th or 7th round pick. So knowing that you had to fill out some of these depth positions, maybe that's a depth quarterback late, maybe that's a running back, maybe it's a corner, maybe it's a wide receiver. Adding more picks could be something the Lions are really, really interested in doing. But obviously, you have to find a trade partner, and that's far away now. I just thought I would address it and say, yeah, I think it's a definite possibility that the Lions could be looking at that when it comes draft time. So there you go. Let me know your thoughts. How do you feel about Todd Bowles? Like him? You don't like him? I just gave you some information on him. Also, trade back. We'll see. Draft time is far away, though. So we'll see. Thank you for watching, and I'm out.